year was 1991, in the middle of summer in Galena Park, Texas. I, female, was 8 years old. Being a typical 90s kid, in the middle of a Texas summer day, I went to the community pool by myself, more than a few streets away from my house. Think like a quarter mile or so. My parents weren't very good parents. My dad drank a lot, and my mom worked a lot to support the family. Mom taught me stranger danger, and I felt old enough to walk by myself. Before this happened, I always felt safe walking around the little suburb of Houston. Anyways, a little description to get to the pool. I walked down the dead end of 8th Street to cross Main Street, then go down the rest of 8th Street and turn down to another side road, then cut through the big park to get to the pool. After swimming for an hour or so, I decided to walk back home. I cut through the big park, heading down the side road to turn onto 8th Street. As I was walking, I heard the ice cream truck coming down the side road before 8th Street. He slows down, and I look at the truck as it passes and notice a woman in the back of the truck, where the window to get the ice cream is. She waves at me, and I wave back. The truck turns onto 8th Street, and I think no more of it. I turn off the side road, and I'm walking down 8th Street to get home. Here comes the ice cream truck again. This time it stops next to me on the sidewalk, and the woman is now gesturing for me to come over to the window. I stand still, staring, and saying nothing. She says, "Don't you want a free ice cream?" And I shake my head no, and start walking towards the main street to cross to get home. The driver is creeping alongside me as I walk, while the woman is saying, "Come on, you look like you want an ice cream. We could give you a ride home. Aren't you hot? Don't you want a ride home?" They gave me bad vibes, and I was terrified. Just then, a car pulls onto the road a little ways down, and the ice cream truck takes off and turns onto Main Street. I'm now freaked out, thinking stranger danger, and contemplating if I run as fast as I could, if I could make it across Main Street and home before the truck comes back around. My little 8-year-old legs won't make it in time, so I start really freaking out and crying. I'm terrified of knocking on strangers' doors, so I'm struggling trying to figure out what to do. I don't want to be kidnapped. I run down the road and stop at a kid's house I've played with before. I knock on the door and keep looking down the road, terrified the ice cream truck is going to come. No answer. Now I'm truly fucked. There's a little playhouse in the side yard, so I haul ass into the playhouse and sit there hiding and trying not to piss my pants. Just as I'm trying to calm myself down, I look through the little plastic window and see the ice cream truck coming down the road again, very slowly. No music is playing, just creeping along. I lay flat out on the ground and pray that they don't see me. I don't know how long I laid there, but it felt like an eternity. When I finally found the courage to get up, I peeked my head up and looked around the plastic window, and the truck wasn't around. After talking myself up a bit, I finally left the playhouse and ran like the wind all the way home. I didn't stop at the main street. I didn't look both ways to cross the street or anything. When I got home, I cried my eyes out, and my dad didn't take me seriously, which broke my heart. He was a true asshole and alcoholic. When my mom got home, I told her what happened, and she called the cops and reported the incident. Nothing came of it, but I wasn't allowed to leave the house alone ever again until I was older. I work as a childcare professional, and one of the kids that I look after had recently gotten into hiking. I decided to take him to a really cool trail in Salt Fork State Park. We were all set to hike to Hozak's Cave after parking right near the beginning of the trailhead. The entire trail is about half a mile, which is why I chose the trail for our hike that day. I also chose this trail because any time that I had been on it before, it was very busy and full of people, and a very popular spot, which made me feel secure. However, this past summer, we had a cluster of severe summer storms, which caused massive damage to the trail. So to my surprise, it was much more difficult and completely empty. I wasn't bothered by the trail being obviously empty because there was a small construction crew working on a bridge that was just barely visible from the trailhead. He was still up for the hike, despite the entire width of the trail being washed out, until it was no more than a foot wide, with a 6 to 12-foot drop-off into the creek bed, that a solid rock, and several trees down. He's very athletic, and I was confident in his abilities if he was, and he was so excited to tackle our adventure. We made it all the way to the platform that allows you to see the entire cave. There were many downed trees surrounding the platform, and it was actually closed at this point, but we had made it this far, so we decided to move her around the platform and proceeded the few hundred feet into the cave. We spent the most time in this area due to the difficulty, so I know exactly what it looked like. There were tree roots directly under the platform, and you could climb down either side of them. It's also worth noting that Hozak's cave is much more like a cliff, with an overhanging rock formation and a trickle of waterfall directly in the middle. It's not a creepy closed-up cave. It's very open and beautiful. We got to the cave, and I noticed a candle that was not burning recently, but had been at some point, sitting on a large rock that had a heart carved into it. I chalked it up to someone having a date or something and disregarded it. He wanted to climb to the top, where I noticed 2 more candles and 3 stacks of small rocks that had been stacked up by somebody. I definitely felt weird about it, but it was at this time that he found a small puddle full of baby salamanders and wanted to catch them. It was the happiest that I had seen him in a very long time, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that it was time to go. We spent about an hour catching baby salamanders, and I watched him have the time of his life. We finally decided to leave, and when we got to the platform, dead center in the middle of the tree roots was a wet washcloth hanging that was absolutely not there before. He noticed it as well, but didn't pick up on the severity of the situation that we were in. At that moment, I factually knew 2 things. 1, someone was watching us, and we didn't see them. And 2, they were now potentially hiding in the woods, and made it a point not to be seen, but to leave an object to be noticed. There was no running back with the narrow trail, and I was not about to tell him that we were in potential danger. I told him to go in front of me, and I just kept encouraging him that he was doing great, over and over, and that seemed to speed him up naturally. I never saw anyone while we were on the trail. We got to the car, and I locked the doors immediately. On our way out of the park, a very dirty man, probably in his 30s, came out of the woods. He made it a point to stare at me with the most empty of expressions that I've ever seen. The man followed me with his eyes and head as I drove by him and continued to stare at me until I couldn't see him anymore. I knew the third fact at this point. He made it a point to make himself apparent to me, and that facts 1 and 2 were true. That stare stuck with me for days, and I considered counseling after this, as it bothered me for several weeks, causing me severe anxiety. I tried to tell myself that maybe we just interrupted his bath time, and he was camping and didn't want to startle us. After all, that crazy-looking man had ample time to do whatever he wanted while we were catching salamanders. I just cannot in any way rationalize why he stared into my eyes the way he did if he wanted to go unnoticed. Deep down, I know that it is much more likely that it was a deliberate action intended to scare me. He never had any idea how panicked I was, and to this day, it's the most fun that I've ever seen him have. He brings it up regularly, and it was a very positive experience for him. It was one of my worst experiences ever, and it made me feel so sick and disturbed. So I just moved to New York back in July from Mississippi and hadn't had any problems until January. So I go to high school that's maybe 10 minutes driving away from my house, and I take the bus every day to and from school. Usually my mom will pick me up from my bus stop and take me home, and I usually only have to wait like a minute or 2. This day, I was waiting for like 10 minutes, and I called her a couple of times, and she didn't answer. I assumed that she fell asleep like she does sometimes, so I decided to walk home. I usually go in a straight line for 3 streets, then make a right and walk straight down from there. On this day, I was wearing a tank top with a jacket on, Batman pajama pants, and old school style Vans. The perfect outfit for walking in the snow, right? Anyways, as I'm walking straight down, I see a man who is in front of me and walking the same way as me. So I take the right turn early, as I can just walk that way, but it involves a couple more turns, because I like to be cautious when dealing with other people on the street, especially if I'm alone. So as I'm walking down and starting to make the right turn, I see the man is now walking the opposite way he was before, and is now walking towards me, which sets off some red flags in my head immediately. This guy's probably 5'11" to 6 foot tall, wearing a black beanie, tan jacket, and blue jeans. And I'm a very small girl, 5'2", so I knew that if he wanted me, he definitely had a high chance of getting exactly what he wanted. So I naturally start walking faster than I already was, and turn, as he's probably 10 yards away from me, and I'm walking really fast straight down. I'm walking for about 5 minutes, turning around to check and see if he made the turn after me, and didn't see him until the last time I turned around. He made the turn and was walking straight for me, so I start speed walking while I'm also on the verge of a panic attack, and all adrenaline has kicked in, and then so does he. I stay at the same speed for a couple of minutes so I don't tip him off and let him know that I can see that he's following me. After that couple of minutes, I see my house and just book it into my house and turn around to see him running after me. I finally make it into my house and just start crying as soon as I get in the door. So weird, creepy guy who likes to follow 16-year-old girls. Let's not meet again.